Lonely loser with a dead-end job dies of heart attack and gets reincarnated as the son of a noble with godlike powers. Ars was an average ugly loser living in Japan and working at a boring job when one day, while returning back, he ends up having a heart attack and dies immediately. The next moment he opens his eyes to find himself in a completely different world as he looks at the face of a beautiful woman as he lays on a bed. At first he thought he was in a hospital, but then he notices a flying dog wandering around the room, while a maid walks up to congratulate the blondie. And that's when Ars notices in the reflection that he has been reincarnated as a child in an alternate world. 3 years pass by without any issue as he learns how to read and write, gaining an incredible amount of knowledge about this world. He learns that the kingdom where they live is called the Summerforth Kingdom, which used to be divided into 7 different kingdoms before one of them waged war and captured the continent. Inside of the kingdom, he was born in the family of a noble lord of a small village town called Lamberg. He also learns that magic is practiced in this world, which excites him the most. But learning magic remains a dream for him because of his young age. His life is very luxurious as he lives in a huge house, has several servants who always take care of all his needs, while the in-house chef cooks tasty meals every single day. Another thing that is different about him is that he seems to have an ability which no one knows about. To test it, he goes down to the training hall where all the household guards and people with the ambition to join the ranks of soldiers come to train. Everyone seems very happy to see him as he sits down when he spots a man getting his ass handed to him while trying to learn how to fight with a spear. Ars uses his special ability which shows him the stats of any person he wants. He notices that the guy has D rank abilities with a spear and a sword, but he seems to have a B rank in archery. He immediately runs up to him and asks him whether he has ever tired using a bow and an arrow, which the guy doesn't take seriously and laughs it off, as he thinks archery is for cowards and women. Ars tells him that he should definitely try using a bow and arrow once, and the guy would have refused to even try it out. But because Ars was the future lord, he decides to follow his command and picks up a bow as everyone watches. He shoots the arrow, and to everyone's surprise, the arrow hits the mark dead center in the very first try. Everyone thinks that it was a fluke, so the guy starts shooting arrow after arrow, only to see that all of his shots are hitting the mark, making him realize his natural talent in archery. He thanks Ars, while everyone starts asking him how he knew this loser would be good at archery. But Ars doesn't want to reveal his powers, and claims that it's just instincts. The only problem with this skill is that he can't seem to see his own stats, which saddens him a little, but he moves on back into the house. Later at the dinner table, he sits down across from his scary-looking dad and checks his stats only to see that he has a rank abilities across the board, and he is strong enough to defeat 10B rank swordsmen all on his own at once. Daddy asks whether he told the loser to try archery. Ars honestly replies that he did, and his dad simply tells him that it is a good thing for a future lord to be able to distinguish between talented and untalented people. After that dinner conversation, Ars starts learning more about how people rule and learns how twisted and ruthless the real world could be. The rulers of the Summerforth Empire seem to be completely corrupt, while farmers and poor people are revolting all over the area because of poor living conditions, while the politicians are working against the people by using police brutality and other underhanded methods, which makes this world the same as America. He realizes that if this keeps happening, the entire continent will be wrapped in a civil war, and he will probably be forced to lead his forces into battle. This thought truly scares him as he is not a warrior yet and doubts whether a person like him will be able to keep his family and the people of Lamberg safe and sound. The next morning, he sneaks out of the house and starts wandering through the streets of the village market. But even after wearing a cloak, people who easily recognize him as a woman start asking whether he is out shopping. Ars fat shames her and moves on as he starts looking for people with extraordinary abilities using his magic eye. He tries in on a bunch of locals, only to find that they are all a bunch of useless losers with no future prospects. After some time, he sits down as his eyes start watering because of using the magic abilities so much, when suddenly he hears a commotion. A door is flung open while a racist white woman throws a young man out on the streets, claiming that she has no work for the likes of him. He doesn't seem to have knowledge about this race, but notices that people are calling him a Malkin and claiming that he is filthy and disgusting. He suddenly remembers reading about them in a book which stated that these people belonged to a faraway continent and were purchased by the people of Summerforth as slaves. The young man simply sits on the ground hungry and defeated when Ars walks up to him and offers him a piece of bread. This surprises the man, who introduces himself as Ray, while the people standing nearby wonder why the future lord is trying to help a Malkin. At first Ray seems skeptical, but slowly takes the bread and starts hungrily eating it, while Ars uses his magic eye to check his stats. To his absolute surprise, this guy turns out to be a total baller, having multiple A and S rank skills, which reminds him of Lord Raven, his own powerful father, as he realizes that this guy is going to become one of the strongest people in this kingdom. His eyes start sparkling while Ray finds him creepy and starts walking away after thanking him. The future lord follows him into an alleyway, while Ray tells him to leave him alone, but Ars finally reveals that he is the son of Lord Lovant and offers him a job as his bodyguard, bribing him by promising tasty food. Ray ends up agreeing, and they both head back to Ars's house, where they sit down across the dining table as amazing dishes are presented in front of Ars, and he happily looks up at Ray, only to notice that the racist maid brought him an old plate with beans on it. She tells him that she can't serve a Malkin the same food as the future lord, and the butler tells him to get lost as soon as he is done with his food. Ars cannot believe the amount of racism in this country, but unlike a white American girl, he actually does something to solve the problem, and drags his chair beside Ray and also offers him to eat together. The maid and the butler try to intervene, but Ars tells them to shut their mouth as Ray is his guest. The maid immediately serves them more good food, which Ray is more than happy to eat. After that, he reveals that he used to work in a band of mercenaries who raised him since he was a small boy. But in a recent battle, all of them died, leaving him alone in this cold, ruthless world. Ars feels really bad for him and takes Ray into his father's chamber, telling him that he wants to hire this guy as his bodyguard. His racist father takes one look at Ray and denies permission, claiming that Malkins are good for nothing and have no real abilities. Ars stands up to his father and tells him that his instincts are saying that Ray has God-given talents that can't be matched by any average person in the entire continent, so his father agrees to give him a chance. He claims Ray will have to pass a test, which will be to defeat him in combat. Ars gets scared as his father is a total monster and one of the best swordsmen in the entire continent. He tries to say that it won't be a fair match, but his father disregards him and starts walking towards the training ground. He calls for a pair of wooden swords, while the guards and other people in the ground start calling Ray the M-word. Raven tells them the rule, which are that if Ray is able to land a single hit on him within the given time frame, he will be hired as a guard, but if he can't, then he will leave the village immediately. The timer is set, and the battle starts as Raven rushes ahead with a powerful slash, which Ray dodges, but realizes that even with a wooden sword, that attack might have killed him. Raven then attacks once more, which is blocked by Ray, who still can't believe how strong and fast this lord is. Big Daddy keeps going on the attack, while Ray simply blocks and parries, which scares Ars, but he notices that everyone else seems to be surprised, as no one else has ever been able to withstand even a single attack from the Lord. Raven goes all out with his attacks, and manages to hit Ray on the shoulder, forcing him on the ground. But to everyone's surprise, he gets back up again and decides to go all out. As his expressions turn serious, he rushes towards Raven, who tries to counterattack, but Ray dodges and slides beneath him, only to attack from behind, using the sun rays to his advantage, which blinds the Lord. Even after that, Raven manages to block the attack, but this is the first time anyone has ever tried to land an attack on the Lord. Just when Ray was getting in the groove, Raven tells him that the time is over, but decides to give Ray the win because no one ever came this close to actually landing a hit on him. Ars is overjoyed and congratulates Ray, while his father commends Ars for being able to find another talented individual, claiming that he really seems to have a God-given ability, while the rest of the guards and soldiers surround Ray, asking him for tips and begging him to train with them. Later that day, Ray wears a dress to symbolize his acceptance in the household, and drops to his knees before pledging his allegiance to Ars. Several months have passed by since Ray joined Ars and started working at their house, and even though at first the other workers were a bit racist against him because of his skin color, slowly but surely all of them came to like him. He spars and teaches the soldiers how to hone their skills better, and ever since he started getting lessons from from R's tutor, his intelligence skyrocketed to the point where he is currently the most intelligent person in their household. Ray also ended up wooing the maids who once hated him, but now like him for his polite demeanor and handsome face. From the past couple of days, Ray and Rs have started having study sessions together where they read up about the history of this continent, alongside the current political situation in each domain. They read up about how the Summerforth Kingdom used to be a force to be reckoned with and was the strongest kingdom by far. But according to Ray, the kingdom is in a state of serious decline as the old king ended up dying while his son, the new king, is only 8 years old. According to him, all the power right now is in the hands of the politicians surrounding the young king, who are trying to use him to gain as much power as possible. Because of all this, the government is unable to rule properly, which is leading to several revolts all over the country. And because of that, the lords and dukes of these regions have started ignoring the kingdom and are maintaining their own personal army to deal with these conflicts. Rs realizes that their county has seen no revolts up till now, but the fact that his father is training every single day while making preparations to get more soldiers must mean that conflicts can arise in the near future. He decides to find more talented people like Ray who can help them in the case of a war, even though he never wants it to happen. Rs asks Ray where does he think the war will first erupt if it were to happen, and without a doubt Ray replies that it would be the county near them whose lord is really old and fragile. According to him, the lord can die any day now, and the war will likely begin on the matters of succession. Ray explains that the lord has 2 sons, and technically the older one should inherit the position, but everyone knows that the younger son is more capable and will make a better leader. If the conflict of succession isn't resolved before the lord dies, both the brothers will fight against each other and the entire kingdom will have to choose sides. Rs asks which side will his father choose, and Ray replies that they will probably choose the big brother because according to the laws, he is the rightful heir. Rs thinks about how his father is still alive and can deal with all these problems, but worried about what might happen if something went wrong and his father got hurt. Ray tells him that they should be on the lookout for excellent talent which can strengthen their position and increase the safety. Rs wholeheartedly agrees with this, and both of them get ready to enter the nearby town to scout some talent. While moving through the front yard, Raven stops them and tells them to be on the lookout for a good mage, as a good wizard can be the key to winning a lost battle. Rs knows that his father doesn't have any magical talent, and once he handed Rs a magical gem to bring out his latent powers, but he turns out to have no aptitude for magic and his father never asked him to try again. They leave their small county and wander off to the nearby town, which is much bigger than their small village town, and the people here seem to be more wealthy than those in his hometown. He tells Ray about how he wants his county to be like this one day, and Ray simply smiles while Rs starts searching for talent amongst the local population. Sadly, he can't find anyone with even above average skills, and sits down for a while after getting tired. Ray tells him not to worry as this town has 50,000 people, which is 10 times more than their village town, so they will definitely find someone. While walking through the wide streets, Rs suddenly notices a small dingy alley where a bunch of poor people are sleeping in the open. He is surprised by this, as he wasn't expecting this huge city with so many rich people to have such poverty. Ray gives him a life lesson and tells him that every place that has a lot of rich people will have people living in extreme poverty, which makes Rs reconsider his dreams of making his village town like this city. A little while later, they enter the main market and Rs's eyes start sparkling as he notices so many things being sold. Suddenly, he hears a man claiming to sell dragon eggs imported from a different continent, and Rs is immediately sold on the idea of having a pet dragon whom he can ride whenever he wants. He immediately asks the seller how much they cost, and with a sly smile, the seller replies that he will sell these extremely rare eggs for a price of 1 silver each. Rs immediately tells him that he will buy 3 and starts shuffling through his bag to get the money, when Ray pushes him back and puts a dagger on the seller's throat. He tells the seller that he dared to sell a noble counterfeit items which should be punishable by death, but the seller tells him that he didn't do anything wrong. Ray claims that he can't have these eggs imported officially or legally, as from the past 1 year, the import from other continents have been banned, which means that either he is lying or these items have been smuggled illegally. Moreover, dragon eggs are extremely rare, so how did a lowly idiot like him get so many of them? He then gets ready to eliminate this lying waste of air. When Rs forces him to stop, Ray immediately comes back to his senses and starts apologizing to Rs, accepting any punishment, but Rs tells him not to worry about it. Later they sit down to have lunch, when Rs decides to get some dessert from a stall, To his surprise, a pickpocket runs into Ars, stealing his pouch of money and runs off with it. Ray immediately grabs Ars and starts running after the thief, who starts weaving in and out of the crowd. But Ray manages to snag the cloak off to reveal a young blue-haired girl. The girl hurries into an alleyway, and when Ray reaches there, he spots the girl being surrounded by some hoodlums, while one of them punches her to the ground. Ars tries to stop them, but the leader gets mad at him and tries to punch, but Ray immediately grabs his arm and punches him in the guts, knocking him out. The other two men rush in for an attack, but Ray makes quick work of them as well, knocking them to the ground and forcing them to run away. Ars looks at the girl through his magic eye that reveals that this young woman possesses S-rank magic skills. He cannot believe his eyes, as the stats for magic is incredible, so he immediately asks her to join him and be her vassal. Ray tells him that this girl is a thief, but Ars doesn't care and promises a comfortable life with salary and good food. The girl looks down at Ars and tells him that she would rather die than work under some spoiled noble child like him. According to her, all nobles are evil people who fill their coffers at the behest of poor people. She herself was taken in as a slave for a noble, but she ran away, and that's why these guys were trying to capture her back. Ars tries to reason with her and tells her that she would make an excellent mage, but the girl replies that she has never even tried magic before. Ray realizes that it's a lost cause and asks the girl to return the pouch bag, which she does without arguing. Suddenly, a bunch of small kinds enter the alleyway and start huddling around the girl, as it turns out that she is taking care of these orphans and feeding them. Ars feels bad and gives her the pouch, and they soon leave as the evening sets. Later that night, Ars sits on the balcony, wondering whether he will ever find such talent again, when they hear a bunch of kids crying and screaming for the thief girl. They immediately head down to ask the kids what happened, and they all cry about how 3 men attacked and took Char with them. Meanwhile, Char is taken to the other side of the city, where the goons throw her down on the floor in front of the slave trader. They start beating her up, but she takes all the damage without letting down a single drop of tear from her eyes. The slaver tells the goons to be careful with her face, as the perverted noble who wants to buy her wants the face to remain as pretty as possible. The goons promise to be careful, but one of them spots the pouch of money that Ars gave her, so he takes it off, only to find out that it's loaded with money. Suddenly, Char gets up and snatches the pouch back from the hooligan and tries to make a run for it. But the goons are faster and manage to catch her again and pin her to the ground. The slaver tells her to accept her fate, as even if she manages to escape, she will simply live a life of misery, always running away, and will die a horrible death. Before he could break her spirit any further, the door swings open violently, injuring the man guarding it as Ray enters the room, blocking the first punch and dealing with the next 2 goons with extreme ease, as he throws his knife at the guy standing next to the trader. The slaver immediately tells everyone to stop, so they can talk, but Ars ends up running into the room and asks Char if she is fine. The girl seems to be surprised to see him here, while the slaver realizes that this little kid seems to be a noble because of the way he is dressed and the way he talks. The slaver calmly asks what he could do for him, and Ars replies that he wants him to free the girl at once. The slaver replies that he can't do that because he is not doing anything illegal, as it's perfectly illegal to sell slaves in this county. Ars tells him that he doesn't care about all of that, when Char ends up telling him to run away if he wants to save himself. He turns around to look at her and checks her stats once again and finds out that her ambition is 1, which means that she has totally lost hope for any future. He starts blabbering about how every person deserves to have a hope and a future that they can look up to, which the slaver finds very amusing and starts laughing, as the only futures a slave can hope for is serving a good master respectfully. Ars gets mad and tells him to stop laughing, as adults are supposed to make sure the children stay safe, and claims that it's up to her to decide what she wants to do in the future, and not scummy slavers like him. Char is deeply touched by this speech, as she thinks about how she can't remember the last time that she ever cried. Ever since she was young, she had to deal with life alone as she wandered around the streets, staying in dark alleyways during the rainstorms and even winters, while she looked at people who had life much easier. She was forced to steal to make ends meet, and even then she couldn't sustain herself or anyone else, no matter how hard she tried. Watching someone stand up for her made her emotional, as tears starts flowing down her cheeks. The slaver has had enough though, and claims that he was talking very respectfully because the kid was a noble. But now he is interrupting business for no good reason, and he is a little too early to be this woke. A bunch of goons come down the stairs and gather around them as he threatens to hurt them. But Ars simply looks at Ray, who tells him not to worry as everything is under control. One of the goons tells Ars to shoot up as he hates yappy kids, but Ray grabs him by the throat and lifts him up in the air before slamming him to the ground, telling everyone that they have made a huge mistake by trash-talking Lord Ars, and now they are going to pay the price for this crime, which is death. He takes out his dagger, while a hooligan breaks a bottle and tells everyone to surround Ray as he is alone. This doesn't work, however, as Ray dodges each and every blow with elegance and precision, while he slashes a couple of them in the abdomen and throws his knife at another one. Before he could continue, one of the goons grab him from behind with a knife, but Ray simply slams him to the ground, scaring the slaver, who calls for the mages. The two mages immediately chant their basic fire spells and shoot it at Ray, who easily slashes through their magic and beats the crap out of them as well. The slaver is terrified at this point, so he finally calls for the trump card, as a giant of a man erupts from upstairs, guzzling down some ale as he walks down. He asks what the ruckus is about, and the slaver explains to him what's happening, which angers the man as he gets ready to kick these people out. Char tells Ars that this guy is a giant problem and that he should run away, but Ars checks his stats and tells Char that it should be an easy match. And just as he said, Ray easily dodges the first attack by hanging from the chandelier and then jumps down to kick him in the face. The man gets pissed and rushes in to grab Ray, but he is way too strong and good at fighting, and immediately ends the match by a clean uppercut to the chin, which knocks the fatty out. The slaver is pretty scared by now and tells them that what they are doing is illegal. But Ars takes out a pouch filled with coins and tells him that he will buy her. The slaver claims that he already sold the girl to another noble, but Ray steps in and tells the slaver that they are taking the girl anyways, so he can take the money if he wants or stay penniless and deal with the other noble. The slaver ends up folding at this threat and accepts the money, legally selling Char to Ars. By the time they exit the slaver's office, it's already morning. But before they could go anywhere, Char claims that she wants to show them something. She takes them up to a hill where Ars struggles to walk, looking just like me, but finally reaches the summit only to see the most beautiful view of the town. She claims that this was her secret place to come whenever she felt down and wanted to show them as a token of gratitude. Ars takes in the gorgeous view, while Ray hands her a magic locket to test out how strong her magic is. She puts it on her neck and warns them that she doesn't think she has any magic as she has never tried it. But the moment she chants the spell, a huge wave of mana surges out of her, creating a massive fireball that explodes in the sky, stunning everyone in the town, including Ars and Ray. After that, she meets up with the orphan kids once again and promises to visit them as soon as possible before leaving on a journey back to Ars's home. After they finally reach back, Ars meets with his father, who at first thinks that Ars got a new dishwasher. Ars tells him that she is an excellent mage and will prove effective on the battlefield, but his father rejects her, claiming that women belong in the kitchen, not on the battlefield. To prove her worth, Char fires an insanely strong fire blast in the sky, shocking Raven, who immediately folds like a deck of cards and welcomes her to the Luvent family, and they all go inside, ready for the adventures waiting to unfold the next day. It's been 3 years since the day he recruited Char to be her vassal, and since then, his father has taken parts in multiple small and big battles, easily winning them all. Even though the mood of the entire continent is pretty bad because of constant wars, the morale of the soldiers of this county is pretty high thanks to his father's amazing war tactics, and also because of Char, who has grown into a beautiful woman who is incredibly potent at the battlefield. No one believed that a single mage can turn the tide of the war, and ever since then, Raven has started recruiting more mages under her tutelage so that they can strengthen their standing army. Moreover, Ars now has 2 younger siblings, a boy and a girl, both twins. He checked their stats and saw that even though they are very young now, they have a couple of A and S rank abilities. Ars has since been looking for more talent, but has been out of luck for a while. But Ray tells him that he has found some information about 2 hunter brothers who are supposed to be pretty highly skilled. Ars gets excited immediately and tells him that they should head over to meet them and check whether their abilities are for real or not. A little while later, he heads out to the forest alongside Ray to find the small hut in the forest where the hunters live when they are intercepted by Char, who is sitting atop a tree branch eating a sandwich. Ars tells her that they got some information about a couple of hunters who moved into these woods recently, and they are just heading out to meet up with them. Char tells him that she is free for the day, so she will also go with him as his escort to make sure he stays safe, and that she definitely does, as she puts him between two airbags to make sure he is protected in the case of a crash. While Ray gets jealous and tells her that maybe she should walk because the horse is being strained by so much weight. She tells him that she has been fighting in wars and getting results, so maybe he should show him some respect. While they were bickering, some bushes start rustling and a wild boar appears out of nowhere, scaring the horse, but is immediately shot down by an arrow. Suddenly, two guys emerge from the dense thickets, happy that they landed the kill. When they suddenly see the guests, they immediately head over and ask whether they are okay, as they didn't know there were people around. Ars tells them that they are fine and asks whether they are the Hunter brothers who recently moved here. The brothers reply that they did move here recently, so Ars quickly checks their stats only to realize that they have pretty decent stats. These stats are well above average, but nothing crazy. The brothers take him back to their place, where the father treats them with a whole load of fresh meat from the hunt on the table, while apologizing if it wasn't enough, as he had no idea that the son of the Lord might visit him. Ars smiles at him happily, claiming that this is more than enough, while Char can't stop herself and starts enjoying the feast. The father asks Ars what is he here for, and Ars replies that he heard tales of his son being great hunters, so he wanted to check them out for himself. And after analyzing them, he claims that he wants them to join the Lovent County Army, as they can be of huge help there. The father is beyond happy, as he can't even believe that his sons can get the chance to become a high-ranking soldiers. While Ars was asking about the youngest son, Char notices that a small boy tries to steal a piece of bread and quietly runs away. But his father scolds him and tells him to properly introduce himself. Ars doesn't think much of it first, but decides to check his stats regardless. What he sees next completely blows his mind, as the kid has 100 plus intellect and is an S-rank tactician. He spills all the drink as he starts coughing, while thinking that this amount of intellect is legendary, and he doubts that anyone in the entire kingdom can beat him in terms of smartness. His father apologizes for the kid and claims that unlike his older brother, Rose is pretty clumsy. But Ars's eyes are starry as he looks at him, and claims that he definitely wants to make Rose his vassal. This shocks the old man as well as his sons, who can't believe it. The father tells Ars to reconsider, as Rose will just be a nuisance, but Ars walks up to the child and excitedly asks whether he would like to be his vassal and work for him. The kid looks up with fear, as he thinks that these people are going to force him to take arms and fight in battles. He starts crying and immediately refuses, claiming that he will end up dying easily. His father scolds him for talking this way to a noble, but Rose simply runs away and hides inside his room. Ars is sad because he keeps getting rejected all the time, but the father apologizes to Ars, claiming that Rose is no good, as ever since his mother died, Rose has kept himself shut off inside the room alone, and unlike his brothers, he never practices archery or wood splitting, making him a bad hunter. Ars tells the dad that physical strength is not everything, and that unlike his brothers, he has an incredible amount of intelligence, which will make him an excellent tactician. Ars doesn't want to back off, and tells the old man that he will try to convince him once more. He enters the room where he spots the young boy reading a book. But as soon as he sees Ars, he starts crying again. Ars tries to calm him down, claiming that he will never harm him, and asks whether he likes to read books. The kid replies that his mom used to read him books, but this is the only one they have, so he keeps reading it whenever he remembers her. Ars decides to sweeten the deal a little bit and promises that he has a giant library in his house where he can find every single book imaginable. This entices the young boy, but he asks whether he will let him take one book, and Ars agrees. Later that day, they arrive back to the mansion alongside the three brothers, but Rose immediately starts crying when a good boy tries to play with him. Ars asks Char to give the older brothers a tour of the place. While he takes Rose back to his library, the boy is immediately entranced by the sheer number of books inside the place and start picking them out, while Ars claims that he needs to study as well, and will meet up later. A couple of hours pass by and Ars suddenly wakes up only to realize he slept while studying. He immediately runs down, scared that Rose might have ran away. But the moment he enters the library, he notices that Rose is also sleeping surrounded by a ton of books. Ray tells Ars that this boy is incredible, as he learns new words immediately and has a very deep thinking process. Ars checks his stats only to see that it has already increased a bunch, which is crazy. Finally, the brothers arrive and start making fun of Rose for being surrounded by books, as he can't even read. This surprises Ars, who asks what are they talking about, and the hunters reply that apart from their mother, no one knew how to read as they are hunters, and Rose only heard stories from his mother when she was alive, but she never taught him anything. Rose finally wakes up and Ars asks how did he learn how to read. Rose replies that he learned how to read by simply listening to what his mother was saying and matching it with the shapes on the book. This really shocked the brothers, who tell him that he was only 2 years old when that happened. So how can he remember? But Rose drops a bombshell by saying that he basically remembers every single thing from the day he was born. The next day, Ars decides to boost Rose's confidence and tells him that archery is not the only way to hunt, and that he can also learn how to make traps. Rose replies that he has already thought about it, but never had the confidence, so Ars tells him to try it out. A while later, the old man arrives in the jungle, only to see a huge trap in the middle, while the older brothers excitedly tell him that Rose made this trap all by himself, which already has a bunch of boars stuck in it. Rose explains that he realized that the male boars are angered by the color yellow, so he painted the hanging door with that color, which made the boar hit it, and he gets trapped inside. Moreover, he hung a special herb around the boundary to make sure the females and the babies stay away, as they don't like the smell of that plant. This will ensure that they don't overhunt the babies, which can reduce their population and cause extinction. He excitedly looks at his dad for approval, but doesn't get any, which saddens him even more. That night, he sits down in his room alone, blaming himself for his mother's death because after giving birth to him she got ill. He cries in the room alone when he overhears his brothers and his father climbing atop the roof to have a drink. The brothers ask why his father was so strict with Rose, and the dad starts crying, claiming that it's all his fault for always being strict with him, just because he was bad at hunting. He claims that he is being cold to him right now because he wants Rose to hate him, so that he feels like he doesn't need his dad, and leaves for Lord Ars's place, where his abilities will be rewarded greatly, and he will live a happy life. Rose hears all this and cries, realizing that his dad loves him. The next morning, Ars comes to pick the older brothers up, thinking that Rose would never agree to come. But to his surprise, the little boy rushes outside with a huge bag. He tells his dad that he can never hate him and promises that he will become a great man. And then he will come back to his dad and they will always live together. His dad starts crying, and finally all the brothers take oaths of loyalty to the young lord, as they become his vassals waiting for the adventures ahead. 3 more years pass, and when Ars turns 9, his father falls ill. Ars requests him to let him lead their army into the war instead of him, but his father refuses. 1 year ago, the Duke of Mission passed away from old age and named his younger son as his successor. However, the older brother refused to accept the will, and blamed that his brother had manipulated it to become the new duke. Since the older brother had recently shown some great feats in the war, many nobles supported him in the War of Succession. This resulted in Mission being split into 2 because of a civil war, and the neighboring Duchy of Sates took this chance to invade them, making things even more tense. Ars believes that he must go to war, but his father tells him that there are more important things he needs to do since his fiancée is coming here. Ars freaks out on hearing about a fiancé, and his dad remarks that he must have forgotten to tell him that he was engaged before even being born. He hands his son a letter from his fiancée, and Ars immediately runs to his friends to alert them about the emergency. He is flustered because he never knew he had a fiancée, and now she is coming to visit him. A maid immediately tells him that his fiancée is already at the gate, and Ars nervously goes there to receive her. In his past life, he didn't even have a girlfriend, so he is nervous about how to treat his fiancée. The girl introduces herself as Lisha, and Ars is smitten by her cuteness before realizing that her diplomacy stat is 100 and her ambition is 80. He is taken aback and thinks that Lisha is a dangerous person who might try to take over his family while pretending to be a sweet girl. However, as she smiles at him, he suddenly forgets about stopping her from taking over his family and starts simping for her instead. He invites her in, and Lisha and her butler see all the servants hurrying to make preparations to welcome her. Her butler is about to turn racist on seeing Ray, but Lisha stops him. She knows about Ray and his great achievements on the battlefield and asks her butler to apologize for being rude to him. The butler apologizes to Ars, who says that it is fine. After that, the maids gift Lisha a bouquet of roses to welcome her, and she cheerfully accepts it. She walks around the house, complimenting it and politely greeting all the servants there. Ars can only stare at her in awe, unable to understand her true intentions. Soon, they sit for dinner, and Lisha points out that he has some sauce on his face. Ars is flustered and quickly wipes it, while thinking that Lisha is really good at communication, and even he can make small talk with her effortlessly. She is super cute too, and if he had not seen her high diplomacy and ambition beforehand, he would have already fallen in love with her. Lisha then remarks that she saw the city of Lamberg on the way, and it appeared quite lively to her. Ars says that he would have loved to show her around if the weather was clear, and Lisha tells him that it will be soon. Almost instantly, it stops raining and the clouds part, giving way to sunshine. Ars freaks out and asks Lisha if she can control the weather by any chance. She denies the allegations and says that she just saw the clouds on her way here and figured out that they would pass quickly. Lisha asks Ars to show her around the town now that the weather has cleared, and he is more than happy to do that. They head to the market, and everyone greets Ars and asks him about the girl with him. He introduces her as his fiancée, and the ladies immediately start spreading around the good news. Ars soon comes to a place where two merchants are fighting because one of them delivered the wrong type of magic stones to the other. Ars thinks that he must resolve the fight as the heir of this territory, otherwise Lisha will declare him incompetent and usurp the territory. Suddenly, Char comes there and offers to one-shot the two merchants to silence them for good, but Lisha tells her that she can't. She immediately identifies her as the legendary magician and claims that she is a great fan. Lisha butters Char up and asks for a handshake and succeeds in winning her over. After that, she asks Ars to let her handle the conflict in exchange for a small favor from him, before he can even make up his mind about her request. Lisha is already in front of the two merchants and asks them to stop fighting lest they ruin their handsome faces. She introduces herself as Ars's fiancée, and the men stop fighting and congratulate her. Lisha then tells the magic stone merchant to sell his sound magic stones to her because they don't have them in her territory. She also offers the second merchant to buy the fire magic stones he needs at a low price from her territory because they have a volcano there. She says that it is the perfect solution for them, and gives Ars all the credit for coming up with this idea. The merchants believe her and thank Ars. Woe takes this chance and asks them to always keep written documents about the deals they make. After everyone disperses, Ars thanks Lisha, and they resume their tour. They are returning back home in the evening, when Lisha wants to cash in her favor from before. Ars nervously waits for her favor, but Lisha just wants to know what kind of girls he likes. He is stunned because he really doesn't understand what her true intentions are. He knows that her intelligence is far superior to his, but he is ready to take his chances. He tells Lisha that he likes people who are honest and truthfully express their intentions. She simply smiles and says that she will take it as a reference. That night, they have a nice dinner, and then Ars goes to sleep, still wondering what his fiancée's true intentions are. As he lifts his bedsheet, he is shocked to find Lisha hiding there, but she asks him to be quiet. Ars says that she is in the wrong room, but Lisha tells him that she came here on purpose to surprise him. She refers to their conversation where he told her that he likes honest people, and she wants to talk honestly to him now. Ars pours them tea to start the conversation, and Lisha asks him what he thinks of her. He spits out his tea because of the sudden question, and asks her what she means. Lisha reveals that she has a skill that can allow her to see a person's emotions even when they are hiding it. When she met Ars for the first time, the emotion she read on his his face was doubt. Lisha claims that she tried to be friendly to him to lessen his doubt, but it only grew, and he even asked her to be honest with her. She asks Ars what exactly is he suspicious about, and he realizes that all this trouble started because he had a look at her status. He decides to be honest with her, and reveals that he can see the various attributes of other people. He saw her high diplomacy and ambition, which led him to wonder if the nice behavior she is showing was just an act. Lisha understands everything now and admits that she indeed has high ambitions. Ars asks her what kind of ambitions, and she blushes as she says that it is every woman's ambition to find an outstanding man who will fall in love with her at the first sight. Ars turns red too, and the atmosphere becomes awkwardly tense between them. He realizes that it is true that as a daughter of a noble, Lisha will need an outstanding husband to thrive, and he wonders what she thinks about someone like him, who is the heir of a small territory. She laughs and remarks that she was able to read his thoughts accurately just now. She says that this territory is indeed small, and had Ars turned out to be a lousy person, she would have done anything to get out of her engagement with him. That comes as a shock to Ars, but then Lisha tells him that now she really wants to marry him. She states that their family is weak right now, but she can see the talent in Ars to make it big and powerful. She could see that he is loved by his people, and everyone was genuinely happy when they learnt that he had a fiancée. Lisha claims that it was enough proof that he is an amazing man, so she has fallen in love with him. Ars turns red on hearing that, and then she wishes him good night as she returns to her room. He freaks out once he is left alone, and realizes that Lisha's ambition was really cute. Outside his door, Lisha is also still flustered about the bold actions she took by sneaking into a boy's room and confessing her feelings, but she also feels really happy about it. The next day, she returns back to her territory, thinking about how the world of nobles is a foul place full of greed and lies. The nobles will use any method to pull others down and rise up. Lisha has always been troubled by her ability to read other people's emotions, because their emotions were always nasty. She thought her ability was a curse until the day she saw a woman happily married to a strong and prosperous man. That day, she realized that if she also gets to marry a man of outstanding power and reputation, she can get out of this world full of negativity. So she honed the art of lying to please people by reading their emotions, while looking for a strong family to marry into. Lisha had no intentions to marry Ars because of his weak family, and the initial impression he gave her was not good either. He grew more and more suspicious of her no matter what she did, but then he did something that won her heart. While they were traveling through the market, Ars apologized to her for the roads being too rough for her tender feet, and brought her some ointment in case her shoes were hurting her. That was the moment Lisha realized that Ars was an incredibly kind person, and coupled by the respect he commanded from his people, she immediately thought of him as her ideal man. She fell in love with him at that moment. Now, Lisha thinks that Ars is capable and strong, but he is also kind, and she cannot let that become his weakness. As someone who will one day be the closest person to him, she swears that she will destroy all obstacles that come in the way of their happy future. After their first meeting, Ars and Lisha begin to exchange letters frequently. Ars felt a little anxious because he had never chatted to a girl in his past life like this. However, he can manage to flirt a little with her in the letters. Lisha visits him again, and he gifts her some flower seeds because she liked the flowers. She thanks him, and then reminds him that he has not given her an answer to her confession yet. Ars is flustered, but she tells him that he can take his time because she will work hard to make him fall for her. They keep talking through letters, and a brief period of time comes as the War of Succession stops. Ars's father also starts getting better. More than that, he wants to tell her that he has fallen in love with her too. Some time passes and Lord Raven's health starts getting worse and worse, as the doctor comes out of his room and tells young Ars that maybe it's time that he starts preparing his mind for the worst to come. Ars feels really anxious about this whole situation. Meanwhile, the current ruler of Mission ends up getting assassinated by a soldier who stabs him in the back like the Mad King and then tries to run away. Unfortunately, the assassin ends up getting cornered, so he ends up jumping out the window and takes his own life. The next night, this news reaches Lord Raven, who reads the letter in front of his loyal council, and then asks Rose about his opinions on this matter. Rose explains that now that there is no one sitting at the helm, according to him, a deadly war between the two sons of the late Lord is inevitable, and they should start preparing their forces as well. Raven thinks about the situation and claims that now the county chief in which mission comes will have to choose and support one of the sons in this matter of succession. And most probably the county chief Lumi will choose the older son over the younger one. This means that no matter what happens, they will also have to support the older son as well. But the moment Raven tries to get up, he falls back down on the bed unconscious. A couple nights later, the summon letter finally comes to the Levant family ordering the Lord to present himself for the council. Ars reads the letter and tells Ray that his father is in no fit state to visit the county himself. And Ray agrees as he tells Ars not to worry. He tells him that he will leave the next day alongside Char to meet with the county chief. But Ars tells him that he will accompany them as well in his father's stead. The next morning, they reach the county of Canar, which takes Ars by surprise as he never thought a place this big can be held by a single lord. They walk up to the castle gates where they are stopped by the guard. Ars hands him the letter sent by Lord Lumi, claiming that he is here to represent the Levant family. The guard seems a bit skeptical, but he immediately ends up recognizing Char as the Fire Princess and Ray as the Grim Reaper of the Levant family. The guard immediately accepts them inside the castle and starts leading them to the meeting hall, but they end up meeting with one of Lord Lumi's vassals called Ren. He seems to be a well-rounded guy with above-average stats in all categories. He greets them warmly and claims that he never expected to see the little lord instead of his father, before he turns towards Ray and Char, asking them whether they would want to join Lord Lumi as his vassals. This scares Ars a bit, but his vassals are loyal, and they decline the offer. Soon Ars enters the meeting hall and immediately starts feeling like a fish out of water because of the intense atmosphere, so he simply takes a seat at the table. One of the old guys remembers Ars from when he was a child and offers him some cookies while the fatty looks at him with disdain. Suddenly, the door opens and all of them stand up as the Lord of Canar enters the room alongside Ren. Ars immediately starts peeking at the stats of Lord Lumi and realizes that as expected the Lord seems to have very high stats and abilities. Even though it is nowhere near his father's stats, Lumi's trustworthy counsel in Ren gives him all the attributes he lacks. According to Ars, together, both Lumi and Ren are probably going to make the best decisions for the country. The Lord tells the other lords to stay seated, as he explains that the ruler of Mission was murdered, which means that a bloody war is at hand. He tells them that he called all of them out to make it clear that they are all going to support Lord Curran, the older son over the younger son. And if anyone has any issues, they should speak now. Both the old guy as well as the fatty immediately claim that they have no problems with it. Ars also follows their lead and promises to support the older brother in the upcoming war. The Lord continues by saying that all of them should have a standing army at hand, because he fears that the neighboring county may try to take advantage of this situation and attack them. If this happens, they will have to make sure they have enough troops to defend. After that, he dismisses the court, but before leaving, he walks up to Ars and praises him for attending the council in his father's stead. Lumi claims that even though the territory of Lamberg is very small, in recent years they have been acquiring some unbelievable talent, which has resulted in them becoming one of the strongest forces around. He tells Ars to keep up the good work and moves out. Before Ars could move, however, the fatty stops him and introduces himself as Lish's father. He tells Ars that his daughter has been very upset lately because he is not returning her letters anymore. Suddenly Ars remembers that he wanted to send her a reply, but every time he sat down to write, something or the other interrupted him. The fatty claims that he knows his daughter was really smart even since a young age, and because of that, he didn't put a lot of attention on her. Because of this, she started spending more time in the court and learned all the tactics and deceit from the politicians. He finally tells Ars that he was skeptical at first about this boy lord who she wanted to marry, but now he is convinced that Ars can handle her, and he apologizes for glaring at her. Ars apologizes back and promises to write back to her. Back at the Lamberg territory, Lord Raven praises Ars for attending the war council, and calls him a grown man for taking that step. This really makes him happy, but he knows his skills are still very weak, so he starts training every day with Ray. Sadly, even though everyone is improving, he can't seem to improve at all. Ray tells him to take a break, but he refuses as he knows he can't take any chances. He remembers how during every mock battle he was soundly and badly beaten, as no matter how many books he might read, he can't defeat anyone with actual practical experience. Suddenly Rose runs into the yard and gives Ars a letter. The letter turns out to be from Lord Lumi, alerting everyone that the neighboring county is invading the old lord's territory and they need to march against them. This really scares Ars, but he knows his father is not fit to lead an army, so he calls his troops and tries to give a speech. Suddenly, his father appears behind him and claims that he will lead the troops. And when Ars tries to protest, Raven simply replies that he isn't a warrior yet. To prove it, Raven brings a prisoner on death row and tells Ars to watch the execution, promising that if he can remain calm, he will let him lead her troops to battle. The criminal gets taken to the block where he is beheaded immediately, and just as Raven expected, Ars is still too kind and weak as he starts puking on the ground. Raven orders his troops to move out, and they all follow him, leaving poor Ars behind as he cries over his own weakness, wondering whether he will ever see his dad again after this war. The conflict was a drawn-out 1-month battle in which their forces were outnumbered by more than 5,000 men. But because of Rose's excellent tactics that outclassed the enemy generals, Char's magnificent magic attacks that shook the enemies to the core and filled them with fear, while Lord Raven and Ray used their deadly combat abilities to cut through the enemy lines like a hot knife through butter. Their armies finally prevailed and defeated the much larger enemy forces before capturing the castle. After a month-long conquest, Lord Raven and his bannermen returned home 4 days after Ars's 12th birthday. His wife and the 2 younger kids stayed by their father's side as his condition worsened, scared that they would lose their father. By the time night fell, Ars came back bruised and battered towards his father's chamber and asked Ray about the condition of his father. Ray explained what's up with his dad and how bad his conditions are before asking whether someone hurt Ars. He simply replied that he got the injuries while training and that it's not a big deal. He feels sad because his father was forced to lead the conquest, even after being so sick, just because Ars was not ready to do so. Ray assures him it's not his fault because he is still very young, but it doesn't matter to Ars, who thanks him for kind words before turning back. Char tells Ray that she heard he has been training ever since they left on the conquest, and his behavior has changed. He has stopped laughing and has forgotten everything as he trains day and night against people stronger than him in hopes of becoming better. Suddenly, their thoughts are broken by knock at the door, which Ray gets concerned about because it's so late, who it is only to find Lisha alongside her butler waiting in the front door. She seems very concerned and apologizes for coming in so late, but Lisha straight up asks whether Ars is okay. She claims that ever since the conflict started, his letters have become weird. Earlier, they used to be full of emotions as he talked through the letters, but nowadays his letters seem more or less a formality as there are no emotions in them. Ray apologizes from his behalf and tells Lisha not to think badly of him as he has his own reasons. But Lisha claims that she is not upset, but she is just worried about Ars and asks what's up. Ray decides to tell Lisha about all the things that happened involving the execution and how he blames himself for his father's declining health because he wasn't strong enough to take control of the situation. Lisha feels really bad for Ars and decides to go check out on him, but the moment she reaches the training ground, she hears sounds of a very intense sparring match between 2 people. She opens the door to peek inside and notices Ars fighting against one of the soldiers, but he doesn't seem to be strong enough to overpower him. The soldier asks Ars to let the matter rest for today as his body is not in the shape of fighting anymore. Lisha was also going to call him out and tell him to stop. But suddenly Ars gets up on his limping feet and declares that his father was in a worse condition when he was fighting through the war, so it's the least he can do as his son. Hearing this, Lisha changes her mind as she realizes how determined Ars is right now. She turns around to tell the others that they should leave him alone for the time being. Suddenly, a maid comes running and tells them that Lord Raven has regained consciousness and wants to talk. Rose cries happy tears and claims that he will inform Ars, but the maid tells them that the Lord has instructed her to only bring the 3 of them first. Ray, Char, and Rose follow the command and enter Raven's chamber, where they find him sitting weakly. He thanks them for dealing with him on the battlefield while he was sick. He then asks them about their lives in his house and whether they like it here. Ray replies that compared to his old life, this place feels like heaven to him. Rose agrees with the sentiment, claiming that he loves it here. while Char replies that this is the only home that she has ever known. He thanks them for being with his family, even though when they first came Raven wasn't very interested in making them his followers. Ray was a person of color, Rose only 5 years old, and Char was a measly girl, but they all have grown up and proved their usefulness to the Lovend family. He claims that Ars is not yet strong enough to face the battlefield right now, and thrusting lordship upon him at such a small age will be very cruel. But he doesn't think he has any other options now. Standing on the death's doorsteps makes you realize how many things you have left undone, as he regrets not taking Ars to the battlefield before to show him the cruel reality of this world. He always tried to shelter him from the tough cold world, thinking that he could protect him. But now it's too late, as he doesn't think he will survive a lot longer. He talks to them as a father and not as their lord, as he begs with them to support Ars from now on when he can't, and bows in front of them. Tears start falling down Rose's cheeks as he claims that he will study as hard as possible and make sure to help Ars with every single problem that arises. Char claims that he doesn't know anything about leadership, but she wants to help Ars realize his dream of creating a utopia, as she has full faith in him. Ray speaks up and claims that his life was nothing before he met Ars, as he gave meaning to his life, and promises to fight alongside Ars as his sword and shield till the day he dies. They all thank Lord Raven for entrusting them with this task and take their leave. After that, Lisha is called in as the other three leave, and this is the first time Lisha is meeting with Lord Raven. He apologizes for meeting her in this condition and claims that even though she hasn't met him before, he has met her before. It was years ago, when her mother died. Raven also went in the funeral, where he saw Lisha as a young girl crying in grief like any other person would. But when her younger brother started crying because he was hungry, Lisha immediately wiped her tears away and gave her brother some cookies to eat. It was that day Raven realized how kind she was and decided to offer a betrothal to her father with Ars. He begs her to be with Ars during his time of trouble and help him manage the territory. Lisha starts crying as she tells him how hard Ars is trying to be like his father, which brings a smile to his face as he claims that she seems to be truly in love with him. She leaves the chamber only to find Ray looking solemnly at the moon, and after getting out of eyeshot, he bursts out in uncontrollable tears, seeing the condition that Lord Raven was in. A little while later Ars was called in, and he came in with a bunch of medicine. As he starts telling his father about all the research he has been doing regarding his condition, and also claims that he might have made some breakthroughs. Raven tells his son to sit down beside him as he starts talking to him like a father and tells him his story. He claims that he was from a poor territory where the Lord was extremely corrupt and taxed the poor farmers heavily. Tired of all this, Raven ended up running away from his home and territory and reached the main town, where he saw the mayor for the first time in his life. The mayor looked magnificent on his horse, and ever since that day Raven decided to make something out of the cards he was dealt and started learning how to swing a sword on his own. Soon enough he became good at it and ended up distinguishing himself in several battles, which slowly resulted in him being promoted to the status of a lord of the territory of Lamberg, and that's where his life truly began. He tells Ars not to blame himself for this situation and claims that he must need to be strong and take care of the people in this territory. Ars starts breaking down but pulls himself together and promises to be a just and good lord when the time comes, and to protect his people and his family from all harm. After that they ended up talking through the entire night as father and son, and by the time the next morning came, Lord Raven was no longer around to take care of his family. The funeral was held that evening, and almost all of Lamberg came to attend the passing of their just and good lord. He called his siblings near him to comfort them before giving his respect to the funeral with the flowers. Tears come down his eyes, but he mans up and tells his subjects that his father has taught him a good many things, and he talked with him the entire night. He claims that his father entrusted him to take care of the entire territory. He turns towards them and honestly claims that he is not as strong as his father, nor is he as seasoned, but he promises to always take care of them to the best of his abilities and asks for their support during these tough times. This really touches the heart of his people as they shout his name, claiming to follow him to the depths of hell. Char remembers the time she was going all out in battle, and Raven came to check on her and told her to take it easy as she is doing excellent anyways. Rose also remembers his kindness as when he was studying in the night during the winters. Lord Raven came to check up on him and gave him his blanket before telling to get some rest, and to not overwork himself as he is still a kid with loads of room to grow. Ars feels grateful to have so many loving people nearby as he thanks them for their loyalty, while they all bow down on their knees as the reign of a new lord begins, which will bring along its own trials and challenges. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe for part 8, and make sure to check out this brand new anime about a lonely orphan who marries his childhood crush and starts training to become a spy.